Okay, so I think for the question and answer, if anyone has a question for the Sheikh, if you could just raise your hand and then you can go ahead and ask it.
My hearing is declining. So when you ask the question, and he'll have to tell me what's the question. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yep.
Is the modern sort of age and modern West using shayateen construction of a lot of the technologies that are out for short buildings and things like that? Because since the last 100 or 150 years, industrial revolution through the way we're using up all the resources in the world is just skyrocketing.
Yeah.
So are they definitely using that sort of?
Okay, so the question is, Sheikh, is the modern age where we're currently living in using the shayateen al-ins to create tall skyscrapers and building and technology?
It is the shayateen who are assisting modern Western civilization with the continuing scientific and technological revolution, which is going up and going down. This is knowledge that Allah has given, because He says in the Quran, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي السَّمَوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Allah has subjected to human beings, to the use of human beings, everything in the heavens and the earth. And they have the knowledge and they exploit it, so they gave us oil. Maybe in another lecture you'll hear me speaking on the subject of Dajjal and oil, not today. And yes, we are entitled to that knowledge because it's the property of all of mankind. So that does not mean that technology is something haram. What is haram is the use of the technology. If you use the technology, like I use a laptop, and I've written, mashallah, about 31 books, and I'm now working on number 32. If I didn't have the laptop, I would not be able to do so much work. So I am using technology, but I'm not using it in a haram way. But cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, that also is technology at work in the world of money. But you'll never find me buying cryptocurrency and buying Bitcoin. You'll never find me doing that. Not at all. And if I had support from the world of scholars of Islam, we would have been able to build our markets with gold and silver coin, dinar and dirham. And we would not be using this paper money, which is a rope around our neck. They've used the paper money to bring down Imran Khan in Pakistan with inflation. It's the deadliest weapon of all, because they can change the value of money. It's a very simple thing to study. So when we find something in the world of science and technology from which we can benefit, we should benefit from it.
Jazakallah, Sheikh. So any next questions? Yep. So it's the question, what are the fears of the shayateen and where are they?
The modern day shayateens, are they aware they are the shayateens?
Are they aware? Okay.
And second of all, if they're aware, why are they obeying the word of
Okay. So the question is, Sheikh, are modern day shayateens aware they are shayateen? And if they are aware, why are they doing what they are doing, is the question.
Yes. The modern day shayateen are to be found everywhere. But they don't know that they are shayateen. They just brought down Imran Khan's government in Pakistan. Yes, but they don't know. Okay? They believe the Chief of Staff of the Pakistan Armed Forces believes he is rightly guided. He doesn't even have a passing acquaintance with the Quran. They don't teach that in the military academies. But no one is allowed to differ with him. Then die. No one is allowed to question him. You have to accept whatever the armed forces say, submit to us. You see, this is the profile of the shayateen around the world today. You also have shayateen amongst women. Our Prophet said, the last people to follow Dajjal will be women. And a man would have to return to his home and tie down, meaning coercively restrain his wife, his sister, his daughter, to protect them from being seduced and brainwashed by Dajjal. And the world of women today is being constantly increasing. The brainwashing is constantly increasing. And so to find a righteous woman today who submits to truth in the Quran, mashallah for her, mashallah for her, mashallah for her. This will make you a good wife. Allah says, for example, He says, if you have dispute between husband and wife, if there is a divorce, for example, He says, get hakaman min ahlihi wa hakaman min ahliha. Someone from his family and someone from her family to sit down together to try to mediate, because you don't want this private matters to be brought into the public. Look at the beauty and the sense and wisdom. Hakaman min ahlihi wa hakaman min ahliha. Someone from his family and someone from her family will sit down and listen to both sides. Guess what's happening today? From the time a divorce is to take place or threatened, everything is put out into the public to try to destroy the other party. If this is not sinful, go back to school. This is a violation of Allah's command in the Quran. This is sinfulness. And then the matter goes to court. And he cannot see his own children. Sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2 years. She takes those children and holds them as hostages against him. This is part and parcel of the tremendous work of the shayateen on our sisters today. So may Allah bless the righteous women of Islam who will not follow and fall victims of the shayateen. They're everywhere today. As I told you, most of all in Washington.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Next question. So I actually had a question, Sheikh.
Yeah.
So we are told that the Dajjal will have one eye and they will have kafir written on his forehead. So I think for a lot of people here, that's probably what they've been taught. So could we know if that's meant to be interpreted or if it's as it is?
I spent the whole month of Ramadan producing a video for every day of Ramadan. I don't know if Portsmouth was aware of that. No? Nobody. Every day of Ramadan I produce a small video, sometimes 10, sometimes 15 minutes long. And in these videos I taught this subject about Dajjal. that our Prophet said, every prophet has warned his people about Dajjal. And the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, warned his people about Dajjal. But I am going to tell you something no one has ever said before me. That Dajjal sees with one eye, his left eye. He's blind in the right eye. It looks like a bulging grape. But your Lord is not one eye. Between his eyes on his forehead is written the word kafir, disbeliever. And every mu'min, someone who has faith in his heart, would be able to read the word kafir on his forehead, whether that mu'min or that believer is katib or ghayru katib, literate or illiterate. You can still read. So, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu could read. And he could read kafir on his forehead. But why is it that Abu Jahl cannot read? So we send Abu Jahl to the eye specialist. He's called the ophthalmologist for an inspection of his eyes. And the report comes back, his eyesight is perfect. But this is strange. If Abu Jahl's eyesight is perfect, why can't he read? But Ali can read. Is it that Ali is not reading with these eyes? Do we have any other eye beside these eyes? This is a branch of knowledge called epistemology. So we're not talking about external sight. We're talking about, yes, we have an internal eye. And we can see with internal sight. And so the reason why Ali could read is because he's reading not only with his external eyes, but also with his internal sight. And the reason why Abu Jahl cannot read is because he is internally blind. This is our interpretation of the hadith. And so Dajjal has external vision, the one with which you can pursue the scientific and technological revolution and scale the skies. But Dajjal is internally blind. And all those who are embraced by Dajjal will be also internally blind. And any time he plays a tune, they will dance to his tune. Would you like to hear what was the last tune? Shall I tell you? You want to know? The last tune? The last tune that Dajjal played, and so many danced to his tune, is that our Prophet said, when you stand up for Salah, do not leave any space between you. Because if you leave any space, Shaitan will come and fill that space. So you must pray shoulder to shoulder. And Dajjal said, no, you must stand 3 feet apart. And if you stand 3 feet apart, I don't know how many shayateen could stand in between and fill that space. It is because they were internally blind that in this country, Britain, there were so many who danced with Dajjal. and stood up for Salat 3 feet apart. They look like monkeys to me. But Allah also said, follow the Prophet. And our Prophet gave us what are the rules for Salat. And he said, don't change this, don't make bid'ah. Don't make bid'ah. If you make bid'ah and you change the religion, no water for you on Judgment Day from Kawthar. And guess what they did? If you want to perform Salat, you must have a face mask. No mask, no entry. Is this a part of what the religion the Prophet Muhammad gave us? No. If someone wants to wear a face mask, that's up to him. He's a man and he wants to be in niqab, fine. But you cannot make it obligatory. If you make it obligatory, you're changing the religion. Allah is Al-Akbar in His house, not the government. Allah is Al-Akbar in His house, not the government. I have never ever performed Salat with a face mask. I have never participated in Salat with people standing 3 feet apart, except once in France I was caught by surprise and I was already in the masjid. Other than that, I never performed Salat because it's a bogus Salat. It's a bogus Salat. And so, when Dajjal stands up in Jerusalem and he declares, I am the Messiah, you and I would easily recognize this is Dajjal. But guess what? The sheep and the cattle who do not have internal sight, they will say, no, 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 he cannot be Dajjal. Why? Because he's seeing with 2 eyes. And our Prophet said that Dajjal sees with only 1 eye, so he can't be Dajjal. The sheep and the cattle will not be able to understand this hadith and interpret it correctly.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Next question, anyone? Yep, go to the front here.
I was just thinking, just a random point. We know Iblis is our sworn enemy, that he's here to kick us with help. And I was just thinking, when the Dajjal comes, how is the relationship? Because I think we're like team up, or who's the boss, who's
So the question is, so when Dajjal does come back, will Dajjal and Iblis work as a team, or like he wants to know who was the boss? Who is the boss? Is it?
Dajjal has control over the shayateen. They are ordered to work for him. Shaitan is the boss of the shayateen. So he is in control, Dajjal, not Iblis. And Iblis and his shayateen will have to work for Dajjal.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Next question.
Just wanted to clear the Sheikh, I think regarding riba, majority of Muslim community in the UK believe that it's okay to buy 1 house with riba because we have to live in this country. I just want to ask Sheikh if there's any evidence of that we can do that in the West to buy 1 house with riba.
So the question is, so here in the West, people buy 1 house with riba, and they say it's like acceptable because you need to live. So wanted to know whether there was any like evidence from the Quran or Sunnah that's allowed, or whether that's completely forbidden, and what best solution we should do.
You have to be very, very foolish to make halal what Allah made haram. You have to be reckless to make halal what Allah made haram. those who have given this bogus fatwa that because you come to the West and that's the only way you can get a house, those who have given this bogus fatwa, I pity them on Judgment Day. I pity them on Judgment Day. Because what Allah has made haram, you cannot make halal. Yes, there are abnormal situations where the law is suspended temporarily. Like there is no food and people are starving, and the only food available is lahmul khinzir, pork. And Allah says in the Quran, you can eat the pork. But that is only a temporary state. Because while you are eating the pork, you'll eat the minimum. Okay? Number two, you won't lick your fingers enjoying the pork. Number three, while you're eating the pork, you're constantly looking for food so you can stop eating the pork. How then do we explain? You use this to go and buy your big house, you fill your plate with pork. My gosh, look at how it's loaded. It's not a one-bedroom house, eh? Number two, you are licking your fingers, you're enjoying, you're proud of the fact you have this house. You're boasting to others. Number three, you sign an agreement for 30 years of pork. When you're supposed to eat the pork for the minimum time possible until you can get food. So don't use this analogy to justify your monstrous betrayal. You didn't have the knowledge because your scholars failed you. They didn't teach you the subject. And you went in and you signed the agreement. And now you have a rope around your neck. Don't blame me for that, blame yourself. What to do now? You do what countless of my students have done when they realized what sin they had entered into. They got rid of the house as soon as they could, regardless of what the price they had to pay. And then they rented. I lived in the United States for 12 years. And for 12 years I was paying a rent. I never, ever thought about buying a house. You rent a place. And when you cannot afford to rent a place, you make Hijra. You go somewhere else where you can afford to live. That is my answer to you. It is haram. And no one can make haram, cannot make it halal.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Next question. Yeah.
At the same time, wearing masks was being forbidden.
So the question is, so you mentioned earlier about wearing a mask being a bid'ah, and then mentioning pork when you're in like a severe situation that it's okay to eat. So is it the link between the two?
I never said that wearing a mask was bid'ah. I said those who want to wear the mask will have the freedom to do so. I have no problem with that. I said when you impose it as the law, You're not allowed to enter the house of Allah. You're not allowed to stand in the saf to join the salat unless you have a mask. That is bid'ah.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Yep.
I have one more question regarding the West is majority Muslims celebrate birthdays without some know the security there, the candles and all that behind it. But some say we're just celebrating my sons or daughters because they reach age 8. But the concept is it's not from Islam. It's from another pagan religion, and it has severe meanings behind it. But the Muslims, I just think it's a West thing we all celebrate happiness. If you could just clarify what the danger of Muslims celebrating birthday and why is it forbidden, if you could make the link and make clear to this young generation could understand.
Yep. So the question here is, Sheikh, what are the dangers of celebrating people's birthdays, and where has this tradition come from, and is it allowed in Islam?
Let me share with you my disappointment. Really, Portsmouth. I came to you to teach you a subject no one else can teach you. I'm the only one who can teach you. This is so important a subject to understand what is happening in the world today. And now am I being asked to answer about birthdays? No, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to tell you I'm disappointed because I expected from Portsmouth that you will pay some attention to a tremendously important subject. And your questions will be directed towards this. Secondly, I have women attached to me who are so intelligent, who have such insight, that I benefit from them. That's the women attached to me. And our sisters are just silent today. I'm disappointed, yes, really. So I'm not going to answer that question.
Next question. I think we had two questions here.
Yes. Oh, good. We now have a question from our elder sister.
Maybe this is a bit unrelated, but
Yeah.
I want to know what you think of Putin.
About a bit off our topic, but what do you think about Putin?
The subject is connected with Dajjal. Putin is connected with the subject of Dajjal and connected with the subject of Akhir Zaman. In this sense, that Allah speaks of a time in the Quran when the Jews will be the most hostile of all people to us Muslims. And Allah says, at that time, there will be a Christian people who will be closest in love and affection for the Muslims. Who are those Christians? The Chief of Staff of the Pakistan Armed Forces is blissfully ignorant of this. The President of Turkey is even more blissfully ignorant of this. We are led by people who have less than a passing acquaintance with the Quran. That's our pathetic state today. And you're not allowed to say this. The Christian people who will be closest in love and affection for us Muslims in Akhir Zaman would not be the Christians of the West, where a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate. No. It would be those Christians who belong to Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And already you are seeing them drawing closer to us. Because the Ottoman Empire waged war on Russia for so many centuries, there was tremendous hatred in Russia against Islam. The Russian people, the Russian Orthodox Church would not allow the Muslims to build masajid in Moscow. even though you're about 2 million Muslims in Moscow. And guess what Putin did? He overruled the Orthodox Christian church in Moscow. And he ordered the construction of the biggest masjid in the whole of Europe, in Moscow. I don't need to go further to provide you with evidence. These are the Christians that Allah is speaking of, who will be closest in love and affection for Muslims. And look at Ukraine. Look at Ukraine. Those who are fighting with the greatest courage and valor in Ukraine are Muslims. Chechen Muslims are fighting heroic struggle in Ukraine. And all of Russia is seeing how the Muslims are fighting in support of Russia in Ukraine. So the critics can bite their fingers in frustration. It makes no difference. The reality on the ground is an alliance between Muslims and Orthodox Christians is on the way. And I have left my home in Trinidad, left my wife in Trinidad, who is longing for me to be there, and traveled to Britain. And I'm now going from Britain to Netherlands. More than 5 weeks of lecturing here and then 2 weeks of lecturing there. So I'll be a tired man when I reach to Armenia. Why am I going to Armenia? I'm going to Armenia because Azerbaijan is seeking to fan the flames of war between Muslims and Orthodox Christians. Not the Azerbaijani people, but the Zionist rulers of Azerbaijan. So I'm going to Armenia to tell them what the Quran says about Christians. This is my first visit to Armenia. And wherever I have gone in the Orthodox Christian world and I have presented the Quran to them, they have always responded positively. Several of them have now saying, we accept the Quran to be the word of the one God. Read my book, which is there at the back, my last book, The Messiah, the Quran, and Akhiru Zaman. This is my last book. And see the foreword of that book, written by an Orthodox Christian scholar. He's a Christian. He says, I believe that the Quran is the word of God. I believe that Muhammad is the greatest of all the prophets of God, but he's still a Christian. And I don't stand up on a table with a danda in my hand, take the shahada, take the shahada. I don't do that. That's not wisdom. That man is my dear brother and friend. And so we're seeing, I'm from Armenia, I want to go to Russia, but I don't think I'll get a visa. But I'm also going to Greece, I'm going to Macedonia. Why am I traveling to all these places in my old age? I'm trying to build fraternity between these two ummahs. The ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and the ummah of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. And alhamdulillah, I thank Allah, He is blessing my effort with success. This is my answer about Putin.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I think we had a question here as well.
The Sheikh's partly answered the question that I had because of this discussion. But my thing was, going back to what the brother pointed out about buying a house, and then it's halal just because it's a one property. Many years ago I was sort of suggesting that, but when I looked at it at the bigger picture, if we're all buying one, we're all feeding into the system together to keep this sort of peace. And so, I sort of went, no, that's not what I want to. But in terms of doing, what is it called, the Hijra?
Yep.
What does the Sheikh suggest, like, in the history of living amongst our own, like I said, it's partly answered the question, living with the Orthodox Christians and Muslims together?
So the question, first of all, was about a comment about riba, and then the second part was the main question about, was it making hijra and living with Orthodox Christians?
Yeah.
What would your advice be to people who are thinking about hijra and living with Orthodox Christians?
Muslims in this age should be following the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, who said, the time will come when the best property of a believer will be sheep and goats that he takes with him to the mountainsides. Pakistan has lovely mountains. Albania has lovely mountains. Take with him to the mountainsides and to places where rain falls, fleeing with his religion. When you go to the mountainsides, when you make Hijra, you should also try to bring with you and build with you fraternity with other people who live the religious way of life. You find a Hindu, and that Hindu is righteous, a righteous person. You can live with him as a neighbor. A Christian, a Jew, whoever is righteous and is not hostile to your faith. It is better than only Muslims living by themselves, because then you are an easier target.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Next question, anyone? Have a question at the back here? So the question is the virus a part of the Minsa?
I came to the conclusion 2 years ago that this virus has not come from nature. Rather, that this virus represents biological warfare. Biological warfare. And I recognize the footprints of Dajjal. And the footprints of Dajjal, I don't have the time to expand on this now, always comes in 3 parts. I don't have the time to explain. But this book, Jerusalem in the Quran, will give you the 3 parts. So we have had 1 part of the virus so far, and there's a second to come, and then there's a third. This is my eschatological view. This one was a light shower of rain. But when the second one comes, it will be heavy rain. And when the third one comes, it will be thunder showers. So their plan is biological warfare that will wipe out large numbers of people. But our Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, prophesied. He said the Arabs will be attacked by plague. And they will die the way sheep die in a plague. So reading between the lines, that this biological warfare is meant to culminate with the Arabs being wiped out in Israel and around Israel. I don't know when the second stage will start, but I was able to travel from Trinidad to London and no virus restrictions, none. All they asked for was my passport. So it seems to me as though phase 1 is coming to an end. And there's a lull before phase 2 starts. I was happy when confirmation came in the Security Council of the United Nations. When Russia presented in the United Nations Security Council evidence that the Western world were funding laboratories in Ukraine, where birds and bats were being infected with the virus, and there were numbers attached to their legs, and these metallic numbers could be activated from a satellite above. and they would study the migratory pattern of the birds, where they will fly. And when a bird was over a target territory, that bird will then be brought down through a satellite. And then the virus will spread in that territory. Russia presented the evidence in the Security Council of the United Nations. Evidence which confirmed that this was biological warfare.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Next question. Question here. Yeah, so question is, if Muslims were to migrate from the West, which countries would you recommend?
Go back to the land from where your parents came. And if you are from British ancestors, then remember that Muhammad ﷺ was from Mecca, and he left Mecca. So if you have to leave Britain, you will be following the Sunnah. If you are from Pakistan, go back to Pakistan. I would love to go back and live in Pakistan myself, but I don't think the Pakistan Armed Forces will allow me to do that, because I'm hitting them very hard now. Okay? The normal Pakistani can't do it. It will be too dangerous for him. But I can do it, and I'll continue to do it. So I probably won't be allowed to enter Pakistan. But if you can return to Pakistan, many of my students in Britain have already done that. And they are building communities now in the mountains of Pakistan. Many of my students. And the mountains of Pakistan are so beautiful, you can't believe it. Why would you leave that to come and live here? Azad Kashmir is so beautiful, the greenery. If you are from Egypt, go back to Egypt. If you're from Algeria, go back to Algeria. And if you are from Bangladesh, go back to Bangladesh. I went twice to Bangladesh. I went only to the south, not to the north. I went down to Teknaf. The only thing you have to be scared about in Bangladesh is the way they drive on the roads. The way they drive on the road, yeah. I had a vehicle and we were driving to Chittagong, and he knocked down a bicycle and he never stopped. He never stopped. But the people of Bangladesh were so kind, so loving, so hospitable. It was a joy to be with them. So why don't you go back to Bangladesh?
Yes, just to clarify, because of the Bangladesh, if you look at Islamic life, it's very, very down at the moment. There's about 60. There's a lot of people in the country is Muslim, but there's no practice of Islam. It's declined so much so that you can say almost like a kufr state. People will say, I will stay in Britain and go back to Bangladesh. Because here, you can practice Islam more better than going into Bangladesh or some other Muslim countries. So my question to you, what are the other countries? Could be Malaysia or any other country. The Muslim can migrate from the West and also have a facility to educate the children into manners that we have Islamic living, daily basis, practicing, and this stuff. Anyone can go back to the country, but the country that we left, there's a reason, because you cannot practice Islam freely, you'll be suppressed, no education system will support you. So we're looking for a country actually who supports and welcome Muslims can live and practice the religion daily basis. I'm not talking about mountains. I can go to mountains, but how am I going to get to schools with my children to educate them?
Did you hear the question, Sheikh?
What I ask you to do is I have a little book at the back. The Quran, the Great War, and the West. Read that book and see what the Quran is saying of the fate which awaits the Western world, including Britain. And if your choice is to continue to live in Britain, or in Netherlands, or in Belgium, that's your choice. But I am saying to you that this is a ship that is sinking. and no one can prevent it from sinking. And when this ship sinks, it'll take all on board and perish, they'll all perish. Allah gave you a mind with which to think. If you on board a ship which is sinking, and you cannot prevent it from sinking, that is the fate which awaits this civilization which is sunk in sin. If you remain on board that ship, you're very foolish. You've not used your capacity to think. But if you get off the ship, of course, Dajjal will make it as difficult as he can to get off the ship. But if you get off the ship, you have a chance at least to get your wife to come off, to get your children to come off, your father and mother. At this time they're saying, son, we are staying here, you're not going to get us to leave. We are comfortable. Your wife is saying, you can go, I'm staying here. Your children are saying, Papa, you can go, we're staying here. So if you get off the ship, at least you have a chance of saving them. Once you remain on board the ship, everybody will perish.
Yeah, so tell me where the boat is not sinking, because that's when we get to Bangladesh. Bangladesh boat is sinking. So tell me the place the boat is not sinking that everybody survives.
So where is the boat not sinking, Sheikh, which is not Bangladesh?
Dajjal comes with a river and a fire. But his river is a fire. And his fire is the cool waters of a river. So where on the face of the earth you see the green pastures, the green pastures are where you have the hard currency, the US dollar, the sterling pound, the euro. These are the green pastures. Because over here life is affluent, you're able to live in some prosperity. This is Dajjal's river. But this is in fact his fire. And over there where life is miserable, you can't even get a job. The money is worthless. People are suffering. And that looks like the fire. But that's the river. So I would go without thinking. I will not even I'll go close my eyes and I'll live in Indonesia. Because yes, Indonesia is miserably poor. People are suffering. And yet, I have never seen sweeter smiles, both from men and women. And you know, there's a difference of a world between a natural smile and the smile of a politician. You know that. The sweetest smiles I have ever seen in my life, both men and women, are in Indonesia, the poorest people. That's the purity of the heart. You look at the smile, and you know the heart. So too in Pakistan, in the villages, in the mountainsides, that's where you go when you want to make Hijra. Don't move from here to Qatar.
We had a question here first.
Just very quickly, the Sheikh mentioned about his school in Pakistan. If he's not able to go there, how does that go forward? And for the rest of us who are planning to sort of uproot and go to a place where we will be better off, how do we stay connected, or how can we further our sort of eschatology learning for ourselves and for our children to keep it going?
Okay, so the question is about, I think it was Sheikh's school in Pakistan, and yeah, so you have a school in Pakistan. How does it run forward when you're not there? And say if someone was to make Hijra to like Pakistan, how then, or anywhere, how would they best further their children's Islamic knowledge if they were living in a mountain or in a remote location?
But in terms of how do we keep going forward with
Yeah.
Because I've read the board and stuff, and eschatology in the way that the chef teaches is quite hard to come across. So I'm just sort of thinking, for their future, how do we keep it going forward?
So how do we keep eschatology going forward for future generations?
Okay. I studied in Pakistan at Karachi University. I did philosophy. I also studied at the Alimia Institute of Islamic Studies in Karachi. But that institute dazzled the world while my teacher was alive. Once he died, there was no one to replace him. So the institute, since his death, is no longer producing the kind of scholars that my teacher wanted. I have never attempted to establish an institute other than an effort I made in Malaysia, but then religious affairs in Malaysia are not in the hands of the federal government. They're in the hands of the monarchy, the king. And the king controls the ulama and so on. And they didn't like my profile of scholarship, the Maulanas of Malaysia. And so they control the police. And we were being harassed. So that property is now closed down and we're trying to get it sold. I'm trying to transfer it now to Pakistan. But in Pakistan we started only the online Institute of Islamic Eschatology. When we have the funds available, then we'll be able to build a structure and continue with an Institute of Islamic Study. How do you arrange your education when you make Hijra? I can't answer all of these questions. All I can say to you is don't stay on board this sinking ship. That's all. Make Hijra. And Allah says in the Quran, His earth is wide. Put your trust in Allah. And Allah can help you. And your children can get an education. And that reminds me, if you've not taught your children to recite the Quran every day, what kind of education are you giving them? What kind of education are you giving your children? You have not taught your children to recite the Quran every day. You have not taught them to recite the whole Quran from cover to cover, to khatam the Quran every month. And you believe you are a successful parent? Your children have now grown up. They're teenagers, they're in their 20s and so on, and they cannot recite the Quran, and you believe you have succeeded in teaching them, and you're living here in Britain. What have you done? What nonsense is this? Don't you have any sense? Your first duty to your children for their education is to learn to recite the Quran and to recite the correct juz of the Quran every day. My book, The Quran and the Moon, which explained this subject, last night it was sold out. So I don't have any copies now. But what you can do is give your name and give your contact number if you want to get a copy or a few copies of that book. Because we don't have it now. But we have stocks in Birmingham. So we will then send it to you, inshallah, okay?
Yep.
When the Malhama comes and we haven't made time or gather enough momentum for Hijra, and like, for example, let's say the nuclear thing comes in and all costs are shuhadas.
So the question is, if the Malhama comes and we haven't made Hijra and we're all stuck here and we get nuclear bombed, would we all be classed as shuhada?
I cannot tell. But one thing you must banish from your heart is the fear of death. Let me repeat that. If you are a Muslim, You must banish from your heart the fear of death. So if the malhama is to take place, nuclear war is to take place tomorrow, but you have work to do. You have to teach the Quran to people, you have to travel. Go on, keep on doing the work, even though tomorrow this nuclear war will take place. But if you have a family, then the sensible thing to do is to get them out of the Western world, because this West will be destroyed. And if you cannot leave the West, then at least leave the cities and relocate to the remote countryside. I'm saying this to people and I'm not doing it myself. So I got a plot of land 100 yards from the beach in Trinidad, remotely located, and the last few months I've been struggling to build a small home. Because over there we get fish. You buy the sea, you get fish. The remote countryside, there are lots of vegetables. So we can survive in the remote countryside. I'm doing that myself.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Question 8.
Thank you. Going back to the subject at hand, basically, about the child. So, obviously, when he shows himself or when he arrives, how come every man and children, woman and children, he arrives? How can we prepare for that if we can't get to this?
So, a question is, when Dajjal does appear, how can we prepare ourselves for that moment? That's the question.
The Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, said, he gave us a timeline of events which will culminate with the appearance of Dajjal in person. He's already here, but you can't see him. But he'll now appear in person. Those who have been learning from me already know this subject very well. But maybe some in Portsmouth have not been listening to me. This is the hadith. Our Prophet, which Allah's blessing be upon him, prophesied as only a prophet could have prophesied. So if you're listening to me in Greece, if you're listening to me in Armenia, listen, only a prophet could have prophesied like this. He said that when Jerusalem is built up, center stage in the world, at that time, Yathrib, meaning Medina, would be in ruins, meaning in forlorn desolation. And then he went on to say that when Yathrib is in ruins or in forlorn desolation, the opposite of Jerusalem, then the next event that will occur is the Great War, the Malhama. Then he went on to say that the next event after the Malhama, which could be either 7 months or 7 years after the Malhama, would be the conquest of Constantinople. This is why they changed the name to Istanbul, to hide this hadith. And then he said, and of course I understood from my eschatology, that the conquest of Constantinople by a Muslim army was not only to free the Bosphorus for ships to pass through from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean Sea, and NATO cannot stop that, but also that the conquest of Constantinople was meant to allow us to return Hagia Sophia. Return Hagia Sophia to those to whom it rightfully belongs. And the Turkish government could take that and put it in a pipe and smoke it. We are going to return Hagia Sophia, the cathedral, to those to whom it rightfully belongs, and you cannot stop it. When that happens, the alliance between Muslims and Orthodox Christians would be sealed. And you cannot prevent it. You cannot prevent it. He said after the conquest of Constantinople, the next event is the appearance of Dajjal. He will appear now in person. When Dajjal appears in person, and he is ruling the world from Jerusalem, only then will Allah send the Messiah, the Imam al-Mahdi. And the Imam will then liberate Jaziratul Arab, so goodbye Saudi Arabia. And Darul Islam, the Khilafah state, would be restored in Arabia. That is the greatest threat to Israel now. The greatest threat of all is the Khilafah state established in Arabia. And when the Imam leaves Arabia and goes to Damascus, it is then that Israel will launch a massive invasion of Syria to try to capture the Imam and kill him. And they will surround the masjid in Damascus. And that's when Nabi Isa alayhi salam will return. But you must read my book, the last one I've written, The Messiah, the Quran, and Akhir Zaman. It has this subject there. Okay?
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Next question. Go to the back. Question is, who would you say are the real Muslim beings of our time? Who are the real Muslims of our time? Leader. Who are the real Muslims leaders of our time? Now.
If you want to find a true Muslim and a true Muslim leader today, look to see who are those who are most faithful to the Quran. That's my answer.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Next question. One here.
So at the time of Imam Mahdi, with the Muslim Ummah being much smaller, right now Muslim Ummah is quite big and we're all divided. So to get everyone together as one, would it mean that we will be much, much smaller than others?
Population size, yeah. So at the time of Imam al-Mahdi, will the Muslim Ummah be smaller in like population size?
Okay, Portsmouth, I think it's enough now. It's been almost 2 hours, Portsmouth, but I'm happy to see this appetite that you have in Portsmouth. It's my first visit. I hope it won't be the last, that Allah will open a way for me to come back another time to Portsmouth. But I'm happy with today's session. What's the question?
At the time of Imam al-Mahdi, will the Muslim Ummah population size be smaller?
The malhama is being waged. And Israel and the Zionist world, they want it. American armed forces don't want it. The British armed forces don't want it. They prefer fight against Libya, but not Russia, not China. Because they know that there's going to be massive debt, and our Prophet has prophesied it. He said they're going to fight for the mountain of gold, which is going to come up in one of my lectures coming up on money. And 99 out of every 100 who fight will be killed. It is sad. I have sadness in my heart that mine is the only voice in the world of Islam today, pleading, a voice in the wilderness, explaining these ahadith and applying them to the world today. I am still the only one. I can't get them to come and join with me. But he said that 99 out of every 100 who fight for that mountain of gold will be killed. I can't explain the mountain of gold to you. It's the petrodollar monetary system, but I can't explain it. So when the malhama takes place, the world will become smaller. How much smaller? I don't know.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
Okay.
So I think we can wrap it up for the question and answer. So I'd like to thank everyone for turning up and asking questions. They've been very attentive during the lecture. And I pray that everyone has learnt some new knowledge, inshallah. And now we will, inshallah, have our book sale. So Sheikh has his, I think, 31 books at the back. So if anyone would like to purchase a book, you can go ahead and buy the books.
Don't forget the Quran and the Moon, eh? It's a small book, just write your name and we get a copy for you. Okay.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.